My mother said I was too irresponsible for financial help. Then I found receipts showing she secretly paid my sister's mortgage for a luxury condo. I never thought my own family would turn money into something that could quietly destroy relationships from the inside. It started when my mother told me she refused to help me with rent because I was financially irresponsible. At the same time, I was struggling to keep my apartment after a sudden job cut in my company. My sister Lion, on the other hand, had just posted photos of a luxury condo with marble counters and city skyline views. My mother praised her publicly while telling me I needed to learn accountability. That contradiction didn't sit right with me, but I tried to ignore it at first. I told myself families are complicated, and maybe I just didn't understand the full picture. But things escalated when I asked for a small loan to avoid eviction. My mother didn't even hesitate to say no. She said helping me would enable bad habits. That phrase kept repeating in my head for days. Because I wasn't reckless, I was just unlucky with timing and layoffs. Meanwhile, Lion was constantly traveling, posting brunches, and showing off designer furniture. I started noticing how carefully my mother supported every one of her posts. Every comment was praise, every interaction encouragement. It felt like I was being erased from the successful child category in real time. The emotional weight of that comparison started eating at me more than the financial stress. What I didn't know yet was that something much deeper was going on behind the scenes. The first real crack appeared when I visited my mother's house unexpectedly one evening. I had come to pick up some old documents she was holding for me. She wasn't home, but her laptop was open on the dining table. I wasn't trying to invade her privacy at first. I just needed a folder with my tax records. But a notification popped up that caught my attention. It was a bank email preview mentioning mortgage payment confirmation. At first, I thought it was unrelated business or something tied to her own house. But then I saw the name on the account line, my sister's full legal name. My stomach dropped before I even clicked anything. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Lion was renting and my mother was just a co-signer. But curiosity won, and I opened the email thread. What I saw didn't just confuse me, it completely restructured my understanding of my family. There were repeated mortgage payments listed for a luxury condominium in the city center. Each payment was marked as coming directly from my mother's account. Not a loan guarantee, not shared responsibility. Full payment coverage, month after month for over 2 years. I felt my hands go cold as I scrolled further. The total amount was more than anything she had ever claimed she could afford. And yet she had denied me a few $100s for rent assistance. I closed the laptop immediately, feeling like I had just crossed an invisible line. But I couldn't unsee it. I drove home that night replaying everything I knew about my family. Suddenly, every interaction felt staged in a way I hadn't recognized before. The favoritism wasn't just emotional anymore, it was financial and deliberate. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I called Lion casually, trying to sound normal. She answered in a bright voice like nothing in the world was wrong. I asked her vaguely about her condo, pretending I was just curious. She laughed and said it was basically a reward for her hard work. That phrase made my chest tighten, because I now knew it wasn't a reward she paid for. It was something she was being quietly handed. I didn't confront her yet. I needed more proof, something undeniable and structured, so I went back to my mother's house when she was at work. This time I wasn't looking for documents by accident. I was looking for the truth deliberately. I checked drawers, folders, and her small locked filing cabinet. I found bank statements stacked neatly in chronological order. It looked almost intentional, like she wanted it organized but not obvious. Every statement confirmed what I had seen before. Large monthly transfers labeled as property maintenance and loan repayment. All tied to Lion's condo address. There was no mention of me anywhere in those financial priorities. I felt a strange mix of anger and shame while reading them. Anger because of the obvious imbalance. Shame because part of me still wanted to believe there was a justification. I finally found something else tucked behind the statements. It was a handwritten note from my mother to her financial advisor. It said she needed to keep Lion's lifestyle stable no matter what happens. That line hit me harder than anything else because it implied intention, not accident. I left the house without taking anything, but my mind was already burning. For the next week, I behaved normally around both of them. I needed to understand the full structure before reacting. I started paying closer attention to their conversations. My mother would frequently mention how Lion carries the family image. She said I needed to focus on rebuilding myself. That phrasing always came with subtle disappointment in her tone. It felt like I was permanently being measured against a standard I was never told about. One evening, Lion invited me to her condo for dinner. I agreed, even though I already knew what I might find there emotionally. The place was even more expensive looking in person. Everything had a curated luxury aesthetic that didn't match her income history. She acted carefree, almost performative in her happiness. Halfway through dinner, I finally asked her directly how she afforded everything. She paused for just a second too long before answering. Then she said it was strategic savings and smart decisions. It was rehearsed, I could feel it immediately. I didn't push further at the table, but I watched her closely for every micro-expression after that. She avoided eye contact whenever my mother's name came up. That alone told me there was coordination between them. After dinner, I walked around the condo while she cleaned up. That's when I noticed something unusual in a small storage drawer. There were copies of insurance documents and financial approvals. All of them listed my mother as a primary guarantor. It wasn't just mortgage payments. It was full financial control disguised as support. I took photos discreetly, my hands shaking slightly as I did. That night I finally decided I couldn't stay silent anymore. I called my mother and asked her to meet me the next day. She sounded cautious but agreed immediately. We met at a quiet cafe she liked, one she always chose for serious conversations. She arrived composed, like she already expected conflict. I didn't waste time pretending. I asked her directly why she was paying Lyon's mortgage. Her expression didn't change at first. She simply asked how I found out. That response alone confirmed everything. I told her I saw the emails and documents. She sighed like the situation was inconvenient rather than shocking. Then she said something I didn't expect. She said Lyon needed stability to maintain opportunities. She said I needed to learn independence without dependency. It wasn't denial. It was justification. I asked her why I was excluded from any support. She finally looked at me directly for the first time in minutes, and she said I handled money emotionally. That phrase felt like a verdict instead of an explanation. I asked her if she thought Lyon didn't. She said Lyon understands responsibility to the family differently. That was the moment everything in me shifted, because I realized this wasn't about money at all. It was about a narrative she had already decided I didn't fit into. I left the cafe without finishing the conversation. But I didn't leave without clarity anymore. I started digging deeper into the financial trail over the next few days. With the photos and documents I had, I cross-referenced everything I could. What I found was even more disturbing than I expected. My mother hadn't just been paying the mortgage. She had been restructuring debt under her own name to protect Lyon's credit score. That meant she was absorbing risk so Lyon could maintain appearances. And she was doing it consistently, quietly, without any acknowledgement from either of them. I also discovered something I hadn't noticed before in older records. There had been a period years ago when I was still in college. My tuition payments had been delayed at one point. I had assumed it was administrative error, but the records showed my mother had diverted funds temporarily. Not to help Lyon directly, but to stabilize her condo approval process early on. That meant this favoritism had roots long before I noticed it. It wasn't sudden. It was structured. I confronted Lyon again, this time with evidence in hand. She didn't deny it immediately like I expected. Instead, she looked tired, like she had been waiting for this moment. She said she never asked for everything my mother gave her. She said she just accepted it because refusing felt like rejecting love. That answer confused me more than it satisfied me, because it meant she wasn't the mastermind, just a participant. Then she said something that changed everything again. She said our mother always believed I would survive on my own anyway, and that Lyon would collapse without structure. It reframed everything as a distorted form of protection, not fairness, not justice, but fear-based allocation of support. I went back to my mother one final time. I asked her if she ever considered what this did to me. She finally broke her composure slightly. She said she thought I was stronger than Lyon. She said strength meant needing less. That was her entire logic system, and in her mind it made perfect sense. I realized then that I wasn't competing with my sister. I was competing with my mother's definition of vulnerability. I left that conversation knowing nothing would change her perspective, but something inside me had already changed permanently. I stopped asking for financial help entirely after that point, not because I accepted her reasoning, but because I rejected the system entirely. Months later, I learned the condo was being quietly refinanced again, this time under even more complex arrangements I wasn't part of, and I noticed something unsettling when I saw Lyon again briefly. She looked less happy, less free, more constrained than before, as if the luxury she lived in had always come with invisible strings. My mother still insists I am the independent one in the family, and sometimes I wonder if that was ever a compliment at all.